Have you ever heard of a woman who convinced people she had given birth to rabbits? A stranger who quietly visited Edgar Allan Poe's grave every year without ever revealing who he was? Or an artist whose real identity is still unknown despite worldwide fame? History is filled with people like these. The facts are real, but the answers are not always there. Decades, and sometimes centuries, have passed. Yet, their stories continue to puzzle historians and ordinary people alike. These are 15 of the most mysterious people in history. Let's see why no one has been able to explain them fully. Number 15, Mary Toft. Can you imagine waking up to the news that a woman had given birth to a rabbit? That was exactly what people across England were reading in the autumn of 1726. The woman behind the astonishing story was Mary Toft, born Mary Denier and baptized on 20 February 1703 in Godalming, Surrey. She was 24 years old, married to clothier Joshua Toft, and already raising 3 children when she became pregnant again. While working in a field, she later said she became fixated on a rabbit she had chased but could not catch. A short time later, she miscarried, and then local surgeon John Howard was called after Mary appeared to deliver pieces of animal flesh. Over the following days, Howard claimed he had witnessed rabbit parts coming from her body and carefully kept the remains as evidence. The reports reached London, drawing royal surgeon Nathaniel St. Ander and even the attention of King George I. Mary was brought to the capital, where doctors watched her constantly, expecting another rabbit to appear. It never happened. Under relentless questioning, she admitted that rabbit parts had been secretly placed inside her body to fool the doctors. The confession turned the case into one of the biggest medical humiliations in British history, and Mary quietly returned to Surrey, where she died in January 1763. Number 14, the Somerton Man. Have you ever wondered how a man could die on a crowded beach and leave behind a mystery that nobody could solve for more than 75 years? On the morning of 1 December 1948, a well-dressed man was found dead on Somerton Beach in Adelaide, South Australia, resting against a seawall as though he had simply fallen asleep. There were no signs of violence, but there was also no wallet, no identification, and every label had been neatly removed from his clothing. The autopsy suggested he may have been poisoned, yet no trace of poison could be identified. Months later, detectives made an astonishing discovery: a tiny scrap of paper hidden inside a secret pocket sewn into his trousers. It carried the Persian words Tam Shud, meaning "it is finished," torn from the last page of Rubit of Omar Khayyam. The matching book later revealed an undeciphered code and a mysterious telephone number, but neither has ever been fully explained. Back in 2022, Dina research pointed to Carl Charles Webb, an electrical engineer from Melbourne, although Australian authorities have never officially confirmed that identification. Number 13, Kaspar Hauser. One spring afternoon, a confused teenage boy wandered into the streets of Nuremberg, carrying a letter and almost no understanding of the world around him. Kaspar Hauser first appeared on May 26, 1828, claiming he had spent his entire childhood locked inside a small, dark cell with almost no human contact. He was believed to have been born on April 30, 1812, though no official record has ever confirmed it. Unable to explain his past, he quickly became one of Europe's greatest mysteries. Rumors spread that he was secretly the lost prince of the House of Baden, hidden away to protect a political conspiracy, while others dismissed him as a clever fraud seeking attention. Despite years of investigation, no one has proved either theory. On December 14, 1833, Hauser was found with a deep stab wound in a garden at Ansbach, Bavaria, and died 3 days later on December 17. He claimed a stranger had attacked him, but some investigators believed he had stabbed himself. Nearly 2 centuries later, the truth behind Kaspar Hauser's life and death remains unresolved. Number 12, Banksy. Banksy has spent decades becoming one of the world's most famous artists without ever showing his face. That mystery is only part of the story. Emerging from Bristol's underground graffiti scene in the early 1990s, he transformed simple stencils into sharp political statements that mocked war, consumerism, inequality, and those in power. Instead of galleries, he chose city walls, bridges, abandoned buildings, and even the Israeli West Bank barrier as his canvas. His images of children, rats, policemen, and protesters often appeared overnight, leaving people talking long after the paint had dried. In 2010, he directed the Oscar-nominated documentary Exit through the gift shop, proving his influence stretched beyond street art. Yet Banksy never stopped challenging the art world itself. In 2018, after his famous Girl with Balloons sold for more than $1 million at auction, a hidden shredder inside the frame sliced the artwork before a stunned audience. Rather than losing value, the partially shredded piece became an even bigger cultural sensation, perfectly capturing Banksy's rebellious spirit. Number 11. Nicholas Flamel. What if the man remembered as history's greatest alchemist never actually made gold at all? Around 1330, in Pontoise, France, Nicholas Flamel was born into an ordinary life that gave little hint of the legends that would one day surround his name. He worked in Paris as a public scribe, preparing contracts, letters, and other legal documents for people who could not write for themselves. After marrying Perenelle Flamel, the couple acquired property, supported churches, and became well known for their generosity. Flamel even designed his own tombstone in 1410, years before his death on 22 March 1418 in Paris. During his lifetime, no records described him as a master alchemist or the owner of magical secrets. Those extraordinary stories appeared almost 200 years later, when books falsely attributed to him claimed he had uncovered the philosopher's stone, transformed metals into gold, and escaped death itself. Historians have traced those tales to later writers rather than Flamel himself, but the legend became so powerful that his name is still linked with immortality centuries after he was buried. Number 10. Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. Imagine meeting someone who claimed to possess knowledge that connected every religion, every civilization, and every hidden mystery on Earth. That was the extraordinary image Helena Petrovna Blavatsky created around herself. Born on 12 August 1831 in Yekaterinoslav, Russian Empire, she spent her youth moving between different parts of the empire before leaving home as a young woman. Blavatsky later claimed she had traveled across Europe, Egypt, India, and even Tibet, where she said spiritual masters taught her ancient wisdom, although historians have never been able to confirm many of those journeys. In 1875, she and Henry Steele Olcott founded the Theosophical Society in New York, a movement that encouraged people to study religion, philosophy, and science together instead of treating them as separate worlds. Her books, Isis Unveiled and The Secret Doctrine, drew devoted followers while also bringing accusations of fraud and fabricated supernatural experiences. She remained one of the 19th century's most controversial spiritual figures until she died in London on 8 May 1891, leaving a legacy that is still debated today. Number 9. Socrates. Imagine standing in a crowded Athenian marketplace and having one old man ask a single question that leaves even the city's wisest people speechless. That was Socrates. Born around 470 BC in the Athenian district of Alapes, he lived simply, wearing the same rough cloak, walking barefoot, and caring little for money or appearance. Instead of opening a school or writing books, he spent his days talking with craftsmen, generals, politicians, and young Athenians, challenging them to explain ideas like justice, courage, and virtue. His conversations often revealed that people were far less certain than they believed. Among those who listened closely was Plato, whose writings preserved many of these discussions. Not everyone appreciated Socrates' relentless questioning. In 399 BC, he was charged with impiety and corrupting the youth of Athens, refusing to beg for mercy or escape prison afterward. He accepted the court's judgment and drank a cup of poisonous hemlock, dying at about 70 years old while remaining faithful to the principles he had defended throughout his life. Number 8. George Salmanazar. One man walked into London with a lie so convincing that an entire nation accepted it as truth. Born around 1679 in southern France, George Salmanazar spent his early years studying in Jesuit schools before abandoning his real identity. By 1703, he arrived in England claiming to be a native of Formosa, now Taiwan, a place few Britons knew anything about. His stories sounded extraordinary. He invented a Formosan language, created a unique alphabet, described bizarre religious rituals, and even claimed that 18,000 boys were sacrificed every year to their gods. In 1704, he published an historical and geographical description of Formosa, and respected scholars praised it as an authentic account. For several years, hardly anyone questioned him. The deception finally collapsed when missionaries and travelers exposed glaring contradictions. Salmanazar confessed that every detail had been fabricated. He lived quietly in London until his death on May 3, 1763. But he never fully explained why he created one of history's most astonishing false identities, leaving historians debating his true motives ever since. Number 7. Poe Toaster. Every year, before dawn on Edgar Allan Poe's birthday, a mysterious figure slipped through the gates of Westminster Hall and Burying Ground in Baltimore, leaving behind a ritual that fascinated people for generations. Dressed in black with a wide-brimmed hat, a white scarf hiding his face, and carrying a silver-tipped cane, the stranger quietly raised a glass of Martell cognac to Poe, placed 3 red roses on the writer's original grave, and disappeared without speaking. The tradition is believed to have begun sometime in the 1930s, although it was first reported publicly in 1950. After the original visitor died in 1998, handwritten notes claimed the ritual had been passed to his son, but the messages gradually became more controversial. Then, after the 2009 visit marking Poe's bicentennial, the mysterious guest simply stopped coming. With no explanation and no farewell, one of literature's greatest real-life mysteries quietly came to an end. In 2016, a new anonymous Poe Toaster revived the tribute, but the identity of the original visitor has never been discovered. Number 6. The man of the hole. What if every person you had ever known disappeared, and you spent the rest of your life completely alone? That was the reality of the man the world came to know as the man of the hole. Born sometime in the 1960s, he was the last surviving member of an uncontacted indigenous people who lived in Brazil's Amazon rainforest. During the 1970s through the 1990s, ranchers and illegal miners wiped out the rest of his community, leaving him entirely alone. Nobody ever learned his real name, the name of his people, or even the language he spoke. In 1996, Brazil's indigenous agency, FUNAI, found signs that he was still alive, living deep inside the forest. He built more than 50 small straw huts over the years, planting maize and cassava, hunting wild animals, gathering honey and fruit, and digging a deep hole inside every home he left behind. No one knows exactly why he dug those holes. In August 2022, officials found him lying peacefully in his hammock, decorated with macaw feathers as though he had quietly prepared for his final journey. He was believed to be about 60 years old. Number 5. Sergei Olegovich Tretyakov. Sergei Olegovich Tretyakov spent most of his life serving Russia's intelligence services before making a decision that stunned both Moscow and Washington. Born in Moscow on 5 October 1956, he built a career in the KGB, later continuing with its successor, the SVR. After assignments in Ottawa, Canada, he was posted to New York in 1995 as Deputy Station Chief under diplomatic cover at Russia's mission to the United Nations. While holding that position, he secretly began providing intelligence to the United States around 1997. In October 2000, Tretyakov disappeared with his wife, daughter, and even the family's cat, later resurfacing under U.S. protection after defecting. He was debriefed by the CIA and FBI and eventually became an American citizen in 2007. In interviews promoting his 2008 memoir Comrade J, he said he left because he no longer believed he could serve the Russian leadership with a clear conscience and wanted his daughter to grow up in a country with greater opportunities. Tretyakov died in Florida on 13 June 2010 after choking on a piece of meat, ending the life of one of Russia's most significant Cold War-era intelligence defectors. Number 4, Monsieur Shoshani. Few teachers have influenced so many brilliant minds while leaving behind almost nothing about themselves. Monsieur Shoshani, also known as Shushani, is believed to have been born around 1895, although both his birthplace and real name remain disputed. Some researchers believe he was born in Brest-Litovsk, then part of the Russian Empire, while others argue he came from Lithuania or Poland. What is certain is that by the 1940s, he had become an extraordinary wandering scholar, astonishing rabbis, professors, and philosophers with his unmatched command of the Talmud, mathematics, physics, and philosophy. His appearance was unkempt, his clothes were worn, and he often lived like a homeless man. Yet students described his memory as almost unbelievable. Among those who studied under him were Elie Wiesel and the French philosopher Emmanuel Levinas, both of whom spoke of him with deep admiration. Shoshani died on January 26, 1968, in Montevideo, Uruguay, where he was buried under a gravestone describing his life as sealed in enigma. Even today, historians cannot say with certainty who he really was. Number 3, Count of Saint Germain. Some people claimed he had lived for centuries. Others believed he had discovered the secret of immortality. The man known as the Count of Saint Germain appeared across Europe's royal courts during the 1740s, but his true identity was never established. Most historians believe he was born sometime between 1690 and 1710, although no birth record has ever been found. Fluent in several languages and skilled in music, chemistry, painting, and diplomacy, he impressed kings, nobles, and philosophers wherever he traveled. He refused to discuss his family, rarely ate in public, and often hinted that he had witnessed historical events centuries before his own lifetime. These stories fueled rumors that he possessed the Philosopher's Stone or an elixir of eternal life. Official records state that he died on February 27, 1784, in Eckernförde, Germany, yet reports of people meeting him continued long afterward. Some even claimed he had appeared during the French Revolution. Whether he was an exceptionally talented adventurer or a master of self-created legend, the Count of Saint Germain remains one of history's most enduring mysteries. Number 2, Fulcanelli. No one has ever proved that Fulcanelli was a real person, yet his name became one of the greatest legends in the history of alchemy. Most researchers believe he was born sometime in the late 19th century, although no verified birth date or birthplace has ever been discovered. The name first gained attention in 1926 with the publication of Le Mystère des Cathédrales, a book that argued Europe's Gothic cathedrals concealed secret alchemical knowledge. A second work, Les Demeures Philosophiales, followed in 1930, deepening his reputation among occult scholars. His student, Eugne Cancelliet, insisted Fulcanelli had successfully discovered the Philosopher's Stone and later disappeared after achieving a mysterious transformation. Others believe the name was simply a pseudonym used by one or several French writers. No reliable document has ever identified the author with certainty, and after the Second World War, Fulcanelli seemed to vanish from history altogether. Whether he was a genuine alchemist, a gifted scholar, or an invented identity remains one of the most enduring mysteries in the world of esoteric history. Number 1, Sidney Gottlieb. Some of the Cold War's darkest secrets led back to one quiet chemist whose experiments remained hidden for decades. Sidney Gottlieb was born on August 3, 1918, in the Bronx, New York City, United States. After earning a doctorate in chemistry, he joined the CIA in 1951 and soon became the architect of Project MK-Ultra, the agency's covert mind control program. Believing drugs could manipulate memory and behavior, Gottlieb authorized experiments involving LSD, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, and other techniques, often on people who had no idea they were being tested. One of the most controversial cases involved Army scientist Frank Olson, who was secretly given LSD in 1953 and died days later after falling from a hotel window, a death that continues to fuel debate. In 1973, as public scrutiny intensified during the Watergate era, Gottlieb ordered the destruction of most MK-Ultra files, leaving countless questions unanswered. He retired quietly and died on March 7, 1999, in Washington County, Virginia. Even today, the full extent of his experiments remains impossible to reconstruct because so much of the evidence disappeared with his orders. If these mysterious stories caught your attention, subscribe to the channel and join us for more unbelievable journeys through history. Stay tuned for the next video, where another hidden story is waiting to be uncovered.